So it is now my pleasure to introduce our honored guest and speaker. And for a deputy prosecutor, this is nervous-making introducing a judge. And I think this is, and I do speak from time to time, but I think this is the first time I've ever had the opportunity to introduce a judge. So this is a great honor, Judge Hatchett. So I'd like to say that Judge Hatchett is a tremendously accomplished individual. She's an attorney, a judge, an author, and an activist. And she presides over the two-time Emmy-nominated and Prism Award-winning syndicated show, Judge Hatchett. She's also the author of the national bestsellers, Say What You Mean and Mean What You Say, and Dare to Take Charge. She's a graduate of Mount Holyoke College and Emory University School of Law, where she was an Earl Warren Scholar, and she clerked for a federal district court judge in the Northern District of Georgia. In 1990, Judge Hatchett was appointed Chief Presiding Judge of the Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia Juvenile Court, becoming the first African-American Chief Presiding Judge of a state court in Georgia, and head of one of the largest juvenile court systems in our country. Troubled youths and their families are Judge Hatchett's top priority, and she's passionate about the future of our young people. She's a huge fan of the Keystone Club, or the Keystone program, which you had a chance to hear about from our youth. And she's been involved in numerous ways with the Boys and Girls Clubs, including being on the national board. She has dedicated much of her life to public service, and her gift of service continues still and continues with us today. And on a more personal note, I'd like you all to know that Judge Hatchett has a special connection to the Seattle area. You all remember the late, great John Stanford, who was well loved by all of us as the superintendent of the Seattle Public Schools, and Judge Hatchett was a personal friend of John Stanford's, and I know that he would be proud to have Judge Hatchett here this afternoon. Judge.
There is a quote from Paul Robeson that I love, and I start by sharing that with you today. It simply says, the battlefront is everywhere, and there is no sheltered rear. And so I share that with you. I want you to hold on to that because I'm coming back. And in the words of a contemporary song, there's no place to run, and there's no place to... Well, make sure you're with me. Good afternoon to President Lyons, to our amazing co-chairs for this celebration, this what I call this luncheon. What Linda and Terry need is just a little bit more enthusiasm. I've never met a team quite like you, and thank you for pouring your souls into making this so wonderful. I'm so impressed with you, President Lyons, and your team, so to the board, to the staff, to the people who make Kings County Boys and Girls Club come alive every day, day in and day out. I come, first of all, to say thank you. Thank you for your tremendous dedication and sacrifice. And to see all of you out here today is just wonderful. And the sun is shining. I've been here over the years with John and Pat Stanford, who, as you heard from Adam, was really my dearest male friend in the world. And he always promised sunshine. And, you know, somehow he always said his personality made up for it, and it did. It did. What a great gift he was to this community. We hated losing him in Atlanta, but what a special gift he was to the children and families here. I'm going to be brief with this just to say thank you, Adam. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and dispense with the formalities because I want to get right on to it. I have 20 minutes, and I'm like, you know, I'm Black and Baptist and from the South, and we just get going, you know. I mean, we get to the welcome in 20 minutes, but I'm going to honor this. And keep it short because there's some things really very much on my heart. I'm a storyteller, and I want to wrap this up with a story that I hope will touch your souls. This work is so important to me because from where I sit, I know that if it were not for the work of the Boys and Girls Clubs, not just here in King County, but throughout this nation, that there would be so many children in courtrooms like I had presided over the years. And that if children have an opportunity to thrive, if they are in situations where they are told that they are valued, and they are nurtured and they are encouraged, like these two young people we saw today. Because what I've come to tell you, and I call you my brothers and sisters without regard to race or culture or class or economic, whatever your status is, that we are all in this battle for our children. And that if we don't do what we need to do now, that if we're not willing to invest in our children, and if we are not willing to make them a priority, our children are all we have with which to build a new generation of men and women. And so we've got to get it right now. We've got to get it right now. And so I see our work as like prenatal care. People used to always say, but Judge, how can you deal with all the tragedies? How can you see all the heartache day in and day out when a child is abandoned in your courtroom and you know, he's been left and his mother says she'll come back to get him and she doesn't come back? What do you say to children who you know are smart, but because they have no encouragement, they've thought that they should go and join a gang so that they could be a part of something, as opposed to being a part of a community and a family that nurtured them and loved them? What do you say to a 16-year-old who had her fourth child before her 16th birthday? What do you say to children who are out committing horrible offenses? What do you say to them? But what I do know in my heart of hearts today, and I come to tell you, as heavy as my heart has been, I am full of hope. Because I believe that we can make a difference. And I believe that if our children are encouraged and we are putting support and encouragement in turn around their families, that we can redefine how things will happen. Particularly in the African American community, when the Justice Department said that 1 in 3 boys, black boys born in 2000, would end up in jail at some point in their lifetime. Well, I've come to tell you, my brothers and sisters, because all of these children are important to us, that may be the prediction by the Justice Department, but it does not have to be our reality. Because we're going to redefine this. We're going to redefine, as you have been working and you are already redefining, because we don't get another chance to get it right for our children while they are still our children. And if we don't get it right, our institutions, whether they're educational or religious or financial institutions, will be simply brick and mortar if there's not a strong new generation to stand up and to be a part of what we know is important in this community. I believe in this nation. I left, as I said at dinner last night, I left corporate America and I went into juvenile court. I hadn't even been inside of a juvenile court. I was trying cases in federal district courts and some few state Supreme Courts all over the country. But that is where I found my purpose and my passion. And that is where I believe that I could hopefully make a difference so that we wouldn't see children. If I could get my hands on them at 15, we might not see them at 25, 35, 45, 55. And so I am very proud to tell you that after a lot of arm twisting and praying and, few tears, that we actually started the first pilot in my court in juvenile court as a model of a relationship with the Boys and Girls Clubs, because there are kids who are in my court who did not need to be in jail. And because of that, we knew that we were giving a lot of kids a brand new start. And so I was struck, Mr. President, as you shared the statistics, as I've been doing my homework. And I was struck by the fact that there are children who come through the Boys and Girls Clubs who are operating on grade level. Not only are they operating on grade level and higher than the 95 percentile, but they are graduating. And not only are they graduating, they're going to college. Well, let me tell you what that looks like so you can really, really appreciate this. In 2013, just the last year that we have numbers for, 60% of all students could not read on grade level in the 4th grade. That ought to be shocking to you. That ought to be of concern to you. 52% could not calculate math on 4th grade level in the 4th grade. It gets to be even more outstanding when you talk about Black and Hispanic children. And so the fact that we have a situation here in King County, Mr. Commissioner, where children are operating above the 95 percentile level says that good things are happening in the Boys and Girls Club. Because see, I would rather that 13-year-old girl be in the Boys and Girls Club in the afternoon after school rather than leaving school and going home and being lured in by some no-good trifling dude. I'm gonna keep it real. I am. I'm going there. Yes, I am. Trifling dude, right? Who says, I want to rock your world, right? And then leaders, I can't talk about Seattle, let me talk about Atlanta. Then religious leaders are talking to me about the fact that all these girls are pregnant. I said, well, have you decided how you're going to support programs that work? Because we can either complain about the problem or we can figure out how we're going to understand it, because you can't fix it unless you understand it, and how we're going to move to higher ground to make it better. So now the 15-year-old girl after school is in the Boys and Girls Club, really understanding that she is valued, that she doesn't have to be out on the corner with the thug, with the gang leaders, with the guys who are trying, or and the girls who are trying to get her to do other things. So that now we have a boy who is afraid of being out here by himself after school, who really doesn't want the peer pressure of being in trouble, of breaking into somebody's house. Instead, he is now in the Boys and Girls Club where he's heard for the first time that you are important. That's what our children need to hear. They need to hear that they are valued and that they are important, because there are too many who don't hear it at home. When I first started, I'm watching the time, Naima is wonderful here, because I hadn't planned, because she'll start going. So Calvin, I hadn't planned to tell this story. I'm gonna make this real quick. When I first went on the bench, I ran over to this little mall, if anybody knows Atlanta, West End Mall, over by the Atlanta University Center, close to my courthouse. And I was running errands that day. I'd just been appointed to the bench. And this gentleman came up to me, Mary, and he said, oh, you that new judge downtown. I said, yes, sir. He said, first of all, you look like a juvenile. I said, I don't know if that was a compliment or not. That's before I got all this gray hair of this work I've been doing. And he said, let me tell you something. And I've never forgotten it. And I share this story with you today. He said, you know what the problem is, Judge? Nobody's calling these boys son anymore. And I kind of stood there, Calvin, and I thought about it. When I was growing up, you were growing up, I don't care what your background is, there would be men in the community who would say, son, how you doing? Son, I heard you were on your way to college. I hadn't seen your grandfather at church this week. Son, It's awfully late out here. You need to get on home, son. I've never forgotten that. He said, the problem is that nobody's calling these boys son anymore. Well, I'm telling you, that's what Boys and Girls Clubs are about. It's about being in the business of claiming our children and calling them our own. We've got to be in the business of letting these children know that they are valued and that we expect greatness. And so, I told you I was going to keep on time. I've seen too many young people in my courtroom who never heard a word of encouragement. I did a graduation ceremony that I started because so many of my children in foster care weren't graduating from high school, and so I got my friends to throw a party for them in the atrium of the Fulton County administration. I mean, I pulled out all the stops. We had somebody come and perform, and we dancing and party. Because you think about it, in foster care, there's nobody giving you a party. Like when you graduated, your family gave you a party, yes? So I had a party. And we had, my friends came up with gift certificates for every child, and we had a party. And the first year I did this guy had to have been at least 6'5", and he comes across the stage, and I'm tiptoeing to reach him to hug him, right? And he's sobbing. And I said, what's wrong? You know, I'm thinking we got this party, got these gift certificates, got this, I'm like, this ought to be. He said, this is the first time, he whispered in my ear, it's the first time that anybody has ever hugged me. This boy's 18 years old. He left the hospital when he was born and went into foster care and has been in and out of group homes all of his life. No one had ever hugged him. And so that's what this is about. It's about encouraging and inspiring and making a safe space for our children, whether they're trying to avoid the drug dealers or the gang leaders or an alcoholic parent or bullies at school. Whatever it is, we are creating a wonderful place for them. And I'm telling you, like I was starting to tell you about this whole thing of how do we do it, how people say, how do you do it every day? And I'd say, because I believe that this is prenatal care. That if we invest in this generation of young people while they are still our young people, then we're making a head start on their children's children forever. And I can't think of more important work than to say that you put an anchor in the ground today, way that will live long after you're gone. And so I've come to thank you. I've come to thank you. Got one more thing. One more thing. My last story. One more thing, Anna. How many minutes do I have? 3. Can I tell that story in 3 minutes? Okay, all right. Okay, I'm gonna give you the abbreviated version. I'm looking at Calvin like, I'm not inviting you ever again because you don't know when to stop. All right. Abbreviated, kinda. I was 6 years old, first grade, and for all the educators in the room, I apologize in advance, but I hated school. Hated it. Because I could read already before I went to first grade. And I knew big words, right? And so I sat there all day going with Miss O'Neill going, C. Dick runs, C. Spot runs, C. Spot Jane Dick runs, stop. I was sick of Jane, Dick, and Spot. Honestly, if I had known about dropping out, I would have had that conversation with my parents. So fast forward, she kept saying, we're gonna get books, class, we're gonna get books, we're gonna get books. And we finally got books. And when she got to me, my page was torn out. And she skipped over me. Now that may not seem like a big deal, but if you're 6 and you've been waiting to read, and you've been bored out of your mind, and she skips over you, I still remember what I had on that day. So after class, because I'm raised by really good, wonderful parents, Southern parents. I have manners. I know some people kind of wonder sometimes, but I do. And so I go up to Miss O'Neill and I said, Miss O'Neill, I need a new book. And she says, Glenda, nobody has a new book. Well, that wasn't my issue, right? Right now I'd be advocating for all of us to get a new book. But right there, I just need a new book. And she said, and I wasn't leaving. I was posted up right there, not leaving. And she said, finally. And I look back with adult eyes and I know how horribly difficult this was for her. She said, colored children don't get new books. Now, I was in first grade after Brown versus Board of Education, but somehow that decision hadn't made it down to my elementary school in Atlanta, Georgia. My dad worked at night. My dad's my hero. Still, through all eternity, will be my hero. He died suddenly 21 years ago, but my dad was my hero, so I figured I would just run home. Tell my daddy, I don't have to sit here and talk to this woman about this book. I'm just going to run home. And I don't tell this story to invoke any pain of the past, but I leave you with my dad's lesson, an amazing life lesson. So I break in the house, ripping and running, and I said, Daddy, Miss O'Neill will not give me a new book. You got to go up before she leaves. Daddy, she says, colored children don't get new books. And he said, she's right. Now, for those of you who are looking at me like, what? This is the historical footnote. The books were in the trash. They were thrown out by the white schools. The tradition was that the colored janitors from the colored schools would go pick it up at the beginning of every school year, bring it to schools. That's why everything was raggedy. I didn't tell you all that part. And then the teachers would try to do the best they could to put these books together with a page here and a cover here, because that was the way it worked. Everything we had in our schools was trash. It was discarded. And so my dad said, she's right. Colored children don't get new books. So I want you to go into your room and get your crayons out and sit at your table. I had a little red table with 2 chairs. And he said, I want you to write your own story. Oh, baby, I didn't get it at 6. But I got it now, because what he understood in his wisdom, that he and my mother, because he worked at night, so he would be there when I got home from school. He in his wisdom knew that he and my mother couldn't fix a society where colored children didn't get new books, but he could fix me. He told me to write my own story. And so that's the challenge today, my brothers and sisters. We are called to write a new story of hope and possibilities for children and families in King County. And so when they tell you that these children are worthless, that they can't be helped, you tell them, no, we're writing a new story. When they tell them that you're wasting your time and your money because these children can't read, they can't write, they're not going to amount to anything, you tell them that's the old story. We're in the business of writing a new story of hope and possibility. So run on with your bad selves. The battlefront is everywhere. And there is no sheltered rear. Thank God for you.
Beautiful. There you go. You were wonderful. I always do what the judge tells me to do. I bet you didn't think you were going to church today. Can I get an amen for the judge? Can I get an amen for the judge? Thank you, Judge. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I always do what the judge tells me. She tells me to sit down. She tells me to come up. I'm always going to do what the judge tells me. That's one of the things I learned as a prosecutor.